Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we cut through the noise of dense research and distill it into knowledge you can actually apply.
Yeah.
Today, we are taking AI far beyond the hype of, chatbots and image generators and right into the highest stakes environment imaginable, the operating room.
We're looking at transplant medicine, and this is a field that is, it's inherently defined by complexity.
Right.
When you think about a single kidney transplant, you are balancing hundreds of variables all at once. Things like donor factors, recipient history, nuanced immunology, and the dynamic levels of immunosuppression needed after the surgery.
It's this high-dimensional, high-stakes environment. It just makes it the perfect proving ground for deep learning models.
It really is.
And we've been digging deep into the findings from the 2024 Transplant AI Symposium, which focused specifically on how AI is moving from just promising theory to, well, measurable clinical reality.
Yeah.
The market growth alone tells you the story. AI was valued at, $9.01 billion globally in 2023?
And it's projected to increase by a rapid 40%.
Annually. So this isn't a curiosity anymore. It's a global economic and medical force.
Precisely. And the goal isn't just, automation. It's revolution. AI promises improved clinical workflow, dramatically enhanced cost efficiency, better diagnostics, and ultimately a true move toward precision medicine.
Okay, so precision medicine. How do these deep learning models actually do that?
They're just uniquely suited to integrate these massive data sets. We're talking multi-omics, clinical history, demographic information, to tailor treatment plans that a human simply cannot manage in real time.
That sounds incredible. But we know the promise of AI it can quickly turn into peril if the foundation is weak.
Absolutely.
You can't just train an AI on one hospital's data and expect it to work everywhere. That reliance on data, that's the Achilles heel, isn't it?
It is the absolute critical caution. Successful AI deployment, it demands enormous, reliable, and crucially diverse data sets.
To minimize bias.
To minimize inherent bias and maximize generalizability across different patient populations. And on top of that, there must be radical transparency in the methodology and absolute rigor in the validation.
Including randomized control trials, where possible.
Yes, and we've seen what happens when that rigor is bypassed, haven't we?
We have.
A cautionary tale that everyone in health AI talks about is the failure of the EPIC sepsis prediction model in the U.S.
Right.
It was trained successfully internally, but then during external validation across other hospital systems, they found it had these erroneous assumptions. It either predicted sepsis too late or it created too many false alarms.
Which adversely impacts patient management.
Massively. That failure just underscored that trust has to be earned among physicians and patients through proven reproducible performance.
So if the EPIC failure shows us the danger of not validating enough, how do you build an AI system that doctors and patients can actually trust?
Well, let's turn to what the symposium called the gold standard.
The work of Dr. Alexandra Lupi and the iBox system.
Exactly. The iBox system it's rightly celebrated. It formed the foundational first pillar of Dr. Lupi's long journey into AI specifically for renal transplant recipients. It's all about long-term prognosis.
And what makes it so special is the data it uses. It's a multimodal system for allograft loss, but it relies on data that is already easily accessible.
Right. It's not asking for some new expensive test.
No. It's donor and patient characteristics, medical history, pathology reports, current treatment plans.
Yeah.
It's using the standard clinical toolkit.
But the real differentiator, like you said, is the validation journey. After extensive internal testing to make sure it was a causal deep learning model.
Meaning the factors weren't just associated with failure, they were scientifically plausible drivers of it.
Precisely. After that, they embarked on this global external validation.
And when you say global, you mean massive.
I mean massive. They validated this model across 27,000 patients.
Wow.
Gathered from 44 medical centers spanning 14 countries on 5 continents.
That is the kind of breadth you need to prove generalizability.
Absolutely. And that effort allowed the model to achieve highly reliable discriminative performance, reporting a C-index around 0.81 in the validation cohorts.
And for you listening, a C-index of 1.0 is a perfect prediction. 0.5 is basically a coin flip.
So 0.81 is, it's highly reliable at discriminating between a patient who will lose their graft and one who will retain it long term.
So what does all this effort mean for, say, a researcher or a pharmaceutical company?
Well, the model is now considered so robust that it's been validated as a surrogate endpoint in major clinical trials,
Like the Transform trial.
like the Transform randomized controlled trial. And this is where you see the paradigm shift in action.
Right, because instead of running a trial for 10 or 11 years to see if the graft fails.
You can use the iBox score as a reliable predictor. So if a new drug improves the iBox score significantly in a much shorter time, researchers can confidently predict the long-term survival benefit.
That just dramatically cuts the time and cost to bring new treatments to market.
It's a huge accelerant for drug development.
So where does iBox go from here? How is it evolving?
They are continuously refining it by integrating novel biomarkers, which is incredibly exciting.
Okay.
They're now folding in data on things like HLA antibodies and donor-derived cell-free DNA or DDCF DNA.
And DACF DNA, that's like little bits of the transplanted organ's DNA floating in the recipient's blood.
Exactly. And if the graft is under attack or it's being injured, you see a surge of this DNA. It acts as a sort of early warning signal of pathology.
So it's not just predicting graft loss anymore. It's actually refining the diagnostic process itself.
That's it. This multidimensional approach is already helping to improve fundamental diagnostics, like amending the Banff classification for antibody-mediated rejection. It's changing the foundational language of the specialty.
We've talked about chronic, long-term prediction. Let's
Yeah.
pivot now to acute high-stakes assessment, specifically organ availability. The lung transplant waiting list is just tragically long. Our sources note over 110,000 people waiting in the U.S. alone, with 17 deaths every single day. The shortage is a critical problem.
And often, the donor lungs that are available, they need optimization before they can be transplanted.
Which is where ex vivo lung perfusion, or EVLP, comes in.
Right. It's a machine that basically restores the lung's physiology outside the body. It gives surgeons a few hours to assess and, improve the organ. And crucially, that EVLP machine is also a massive high-resolution data vacuum.
A data vacuum, I like that. And that brings us to the InsightX AI model from Dr. Andrew T. Sage's team. They used that data.
They did. They compiled longitudinal measurements, recording over 100 variables directly from the machine. Things like cytokine production, lactate levels, detailed airway pressures.
From 725 clinical cases. It's this dynamic data that captures the moment-to-moment health of the organ.
And the performance was stellar. The model achieved an AUROC of 90% for correctly identifying unsuitable donor lungs. That's highly successful.
But it's beyond just a yes or no, right?
Oh, yeah. This accuracy dramatically improves the specificity of the donor-recipient matching, which reduces the chance of post-transplant failure.
Now, here's where they leveraged the model to simulate the future. They didn't stop at prediction. They enhanced InsightX by adding recipient data and then building data-intensive, what they call digital twins.
A digital twin, in this context, is a high-fidelity virtual simulation of that specific donor lung being transplanted into that specific recipient.
So you can run tests before the surgery even happens.
Exactly. It allows the clinical team to run accurate treatment simulations.
Yeah.
For example, testing how the lung might respond to a different ventilation strategy, all before the actual surgery.
That's an incredibly powerful tool. But do surgeons trust it enough to move forward?
The accuracy is what sells it. The predictive accuracy of their combined model improved so much that there was no meaningful difference between the predicted outcomes and what they saw in actual patients.
Wow.
And that level of certainty gives surgeons the confidence to use marginal organs that they might have just discarded before, which actually increases the organ pool.
Let's switch organs now to the liver. We know that while short-term, one-year survival has improved dramatically, long-term survival has sadly remained stagnant.
And that stagnation, it's due to chronic complications. Mortality is mainly driven by late graft failure, cardiovascular events, and cancer. This longevity problem is exactly what motivated the creation of
Dynacomp, which uses that sophisticated transformer architecture. It acts as a personalized risk calculator for long-term management.
That's right. They trained it on 267 longitudinal clinical variables data collected over the patient's entire life post-transplant to predict 5 major outcomes.
Okay, so overall survival and then death from graft failure, infection, cancer, or cardiac events.
A truly multi-layered risk projection.
I love how these sources always pull back the curtain. The SHAP analysis, the AI's way of showing its work. What variables did the AI find were actually most critical?
And this is fascinating because it wasn't just complex lab tests. The model found the most critical variables were things like time since transplantation, the age of both the donor and the recipient, the underlying cause of the liver disease.
And just simple body parametric data like weight and BMI.
Exactly, which suggests that simple, often overlooked metrics carry immense predictive weight when you integrate them correctly.
So the clinical application here is immediate. Dynacomp generates a personalized dashboard, real-time risk projections.
Right. And this personalized risk assessment acts as a direct, actionable prompt for physicians. They can instantly see, say, that the cardiac risk is highest for this patient, and they can immediately adjust immunosuppression or start prevention measures.
And then they can track the impact of those changes on the next visit.
Which is the definition of closing the feedback loop in personalized medicine.
We've covered monumental successes built on massive quality data, but now we have to address the core tension in deep learning, the black box problem. And let's start with what might be the most surprising AI application yet. The AI Cirrhosis EKG, or ACE score, from Professor Doug Seminetto.
This model uses a standard, simple 12-lead EKG, a technology that's been in clinics for, half a century?
Right.
And it applies a convolutional neural network, a CNN, to identify the subtle, previously invisible cirrhosis signal. They calculate this into an ACE score between 0 and 1.
And the accuracy for just predicting cirrhosis was genuinely shocking. An AROC of 0.98, that is essentially perfect prediction from an EKG.
But its real power, that lies in its prognostic utility. It predicts future clinical events.
How so?
The score was observed to steadily increase for 5 years before the patient even needed a transplant. It would peak right before the procedure and then decline afterward.
So what's the implication for a patient whose score is creeping up?
Well, they tested its power for predicting clinical decompensation, meaning the patient is getting acutely ill. They found that for every small increase, just 0.1 in the ACE score, there was a dramatic 4.8 times increase in the odds of decompensation.
Even after adjusting for the established Meldon score.
Exactly. The AI found risk factors that clinicians were simply not seeing on the EKG printout.
And the mortality prediction is just sobering. Patients in the top quartile, with a score between 0.75 and 1, had a greater than 50% chance of death within a year.
Reaching almost 100% at 5 years, it's predicting near certain long-term mortality.
Which is why this conversation about how the AI reaches its conclusions is so vital.
If we don't understand the mechanics, we risk fatal errors. Dr. Mike Bridno's team provided the definitive teaching example of this black box failure with their pneumothorax model.
Right. They were trying to identify a collapsed lung from chest x-rays. Initially, their first model failed.
Weak result. So they switched to a classification-based model, and on paper, the performance looked okay, an OROC of 87%. They thought they were on the right track.
But then they used an explainability technique called GradCam.
Which basically shows you where the AI is looking on the image.
And they saw the catastrophic flaw? The model wasn't looking at the pneumothorax.
No, it was looking at the treatment for it. It was focusing on the presence of chest drains or chest leads.
So the AI was thinking, if I see a chest drain, the patient must have a pneumothorax.
Precisely. It was determining causation from a mere association. If that system had been deployed, it would have failed to diagnose any new pneumothorax unless a human had already started treating it.
That just highlights the absolute necessity of explainability. We have to verify the AI is diagnosing the disease, not the doctor. So we've covered the technical achievements and the technical hurdles. Let's turn to the human side, the governance and the practical barriers. First, the regulatory landscape hasn't quite kept pace.
No, it hasn't. Regulatory bodies like the FDA and Health Canada, they're scrambling to devise specific policies for the governance of these dynamic, adaptive AI applications.
Because unlike a drug or a device, AI models constantly learn and change.
Which complicates the certification process enormously.
And there's the persistent risk of bias amplification. We are building the future of medicine on the data of the past.
Which is the problem. Current AI models are generated within the confines of existing data, which we know harbors significant biases. Age, gender, race, all because of how healthcare has historically been delivered.
So without active steps to collect diverse data,
AI risks automating and amplifying those existing disparities. It's not a neutral observer, it's a reflection of its training data.
that connects directly to the point Dr. Joseph Cafazo made about human factors. This isn't just about code, it's about the patient and the physician experience.
Right. So many healthcare products, especially digital ones, fail because they lack empathy. They're technically brilliant, but they're not designed to integrate into human workflows. They end up creating more work.
You need a successful design example to show it's possible. The Medley application for heart failure patients is a perfect counterpoint here.
It is. Medley was designed to empower patients and families through self-monitoring, and it was built with the user experience at the forefront.
And the results speak volumes. Medley led to a staggering 50% reduction in hospitalizations.
And it showed good adherence, even among the older patient population. That proves that sophisticated tools can be successfully implemented if they're designed to reduce friction and genuinely help the end user.
So the ultimate success story here isn't replacing the clinician.
No, not at all. It's augmenting them. AI should take over the complex clerical and predictive tasks, freeing up physicians to focus on interaction, on empathy, on nuanced decision-making, ultimately strengthening the doctor-patient relationship.
This has been a critical deep dive into the high-stakes world of transplant AI. We've covered the massive potential in systems like iBox for renal prognostication, InsightX for acute lung assessment, Dynacomp for personalized liver transplant risk.
And the surprising, powerful capabilities of the ACE score from a simple EKG.
But we have repeatedly seen this fundamental tension. The potential to save and improve lives is massive.
But the ethical and technical hurdles addressing bias, solving the black box problem, and demanding rigorous external validation, those are non-negotiable foundations for deployment.
It's a field evolving with incredible speed.
It is. And as we leave you today, consider this provocative thought. We've seen AI move from simple diagnosis to becoming a validated surrogate endpoint in clinical trials. We have models like the ACE score that can predict a patient's mortality risk years in advance, a near 100% chance of death at 5 years for the highest risk group.
Yeah.
So if AI can provide that level of certainty about future suffering and mortality, does the ethics of knowing and the professional obligation to act on that projection fundamentally change how we practice preventative medicine? How we counsel our patients? What are the practical and, the psychological limits of patient risk prediction?
Something profound to mull over until our next deep dive.